There are names that history books print in bold, names you hear in school, on monuments, in patriotic speeches. And then there are the names whispered among old soldiers, names remembered not because they demanded recognition, but because they earned it with blood, grit, and sacrifice. One of those names is John Basilone. He wasn't born famous. He didn't come from wealth or privilege. He wasn't destined to wear stars on his collar. He was, at his core, an ordinary man with extraordinary conviction. But to truly understand why John Basilone's legacy endures, why veterans still speak his name with reverence, we must go back to a time when the world was trembling and young men were asked to do the unthinkable, back to when a barber from New Jersey stepped forward and became a legend. John was born on November 4th, 1916, in Buffalo, New York, the sixth of 10 children in a working-class Italian-American family. Soon after, his family relocated to Raritan, New Jersey, a small, tight-knit town where neighbors knew your name, your mother, and what you were up to on a Sunday afternoon. He grew up in a household filled with noise, laughter, struggle, and love. Money was tight, especially during the Great Depression, but John never complained. He was the kind of kid who made do with what he had, and made sure his younger siblings did too. School wasn't his passion. He left after the 8th grade to help support the family, taking on odd jobs and learning the value of hard work. The way many young men of his time did, one callus at a time. He was strong, not just physically, but in spirit. Friends described him as quiet, but confident, loyal, and fiercely protective of those he cared about. In his teens, John found a release in the boxing ring. He wasn't the biggest fighter, but he was scrappy, and he never backed down. The ring taught him more than how to throw a punch. It taught him discipline, timing, endurance. But more than anything, it taught him how to take a hit and keep going. By he worked as a truck driver and barber. But there was something restless in him, something that couldn't be settled by a pair of clippers or a time card. So, at age 18, John enlisted in the U.S. Army. He was stationed in the Philippines, and he fell in love with the culture, the people, and the sense of purpose that came with the uniform. He spent 3 years overseas. When his tour ended, he returned home. But something inside him had changed. Civilian life felt too quiet, too slow. And John Basilone wasn't meant to fade into the background. By 1940, the winds of war were blowing harder. Europe was in flames, and the Pacific was growing tense by the day. John, like many veterans of his generation, could feel what was coming. He didn't wait to be drafted. He chose his own path, and it led him straight into the United States Marine Corps. The Marines had a reputation, the toughest of the tough. Boot camp was brutal. The training was relentless. But John didn't flinch. He welcomed it, the grit, the brotherhood, the code. It fit him like a second skin. His fellow Marines respected him. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But he did the job right every time. They nicknamed him Manila John because of his time in the Philippines. But soon, they would know him for much more than a nickname. Soon, the world would. John was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. In 1942, he was deployed to the Solomon Islands, a stretch of jungle, heat, and misery few could imagine. Guadalcanal, the name would soon become etched in American history, a place where courage was tested and legends were made. John's mission was clear: hold the line. Guard Henderson Field, the airstrip that represented the difference between victory and defeat in the Pacific. But holding the line on Guadalcanal wasn't like holding ground in a board game. It meant sleeping in mud, swatting away clouds of mosquitoes, and bracing for attacks from an enemy known for their ferocity and willingness to die for every inch. For John Basilone, It was the beginning of the most defining moment of his life, and perhaps the most defining stand of the entire campaign. There was no peaceful dusk on Guadalcanal. Darkness came like a warning. The silence wasn't comfort, it was tension, thick and heavy. On the night of October 24th, 1942, John Basilone and his unit were tasked with holding a critical defensive line near Henderson Field. They had machine guns, sandbags, a few dozen men, and thousands of Japanese soldiers silently moving through the jungle toward them. The order was clear: hold the line, at all costs. In the pitch-black night, shadows charged. Gunfire lit up the jungle. Flares burst in the sky. Grenades shook the ground. Smoke, mud, screams, it all blended into the soundtrack of hell. Basilone didn't waver. He reloaded, repaired jammed guns under fire, barked orders to his men through the chaos. This wasn't just a battle. It was the beginning of a legend. 72 hours. No sleep. No real food. No relief. Only bullets, blood, and the endless roar of war. John Basilone did more than shoot. He ran through enemy fire to deliver ammo to another crew. He carried wounded Marines from the mud to safety. When guns jammed, he fixed them with bare hands in the middle of the firefight. Every second was life or death. But John didn't flinch. His face was streaked with sweat and dirt. His eyes locked forward, focused, unshaken. To his fellow Marines, he wasn't just a soldier. He was the anchor holding them together. When morning came, the enemy was gone. Hundreds of Japanese soldiers lay still, and Basilone was still there on his feet, unbroken. Nobody had to embellish what happened. Reports were filed. Witnesses spoke. The name John Basilone echoed through the corps. He didn't seek glory, but glory found him. The Medal of Honor, the highest award for valor, was approved without delay. A rare distinction. When John was told, he simply nodded. "I just did what I had to do," he said. No speech, no fanfare. He didn't accept the medal for himself, but for those who never came home. To him, the real heroes were still out there in the jungle. In 1943, John returned to the U.S. to a hero's welcome. Parades, flags, thousands gathered to catch a glimpse. He was no longer anonymous. Photographers chased him. Newspapers called him the pride of the Marines, but he remained quiet. He didn't like the lights, the headlines, the staged smiles. He missed the mud, the noise, the men still in the fight. He helped raise millions in war bonds. But behind the crowds, behind the applause, was a Marine who felt misplaced. "They're still out there," he said. "I should be with them." The military wanted to keep him safe, use him for morale, as a symbol, but John refused. He filed requests again and again to return to active duty. "I need to go back," he wrote. To him, a uniform meant more than display. It meant duty. Finally, the corps gave in. John Basilone Medal of Honor recipient, national hero, picked up his gear and rejoined his brothers on the front line, not for recognition, not for history, but because he couldn't leave them behind. Back in the States, John was stationed at Camp Pendleton, California. There, he trained new recruits, young boys fresh from cities and farms, their eyes still wide with uncertainty. They looked up to him. He had seen real combat. He had survived Guadalcanal. To them, he wasn't just a trainer, he was proof that courage was possible. He drilled them hard, demanded their best. But behind the stern tone and battle-worn eyes, John carried a restlessness. The sound of waves on the California coast couldn't drown out the echoes of Guadalcanal. At night, he often sat alone. Friends say he stared at the stars for hours. His body was in California, but his heart was still with his brothers overseas. In those quiet months at Camp Pendleton, something unexpected happened. John met Lena May Ridgey, a sergeant in the Marine Corps' Women's Reserve. Strong, kind, and sharp as a tack, their connection was instant. In Lena, John found someone who understood military life, the sacrifice, the calling. Their courtship was short but sincere. They married in July 1944. Just weeks later, John's orders came in. He was being reassigned to the Pacific. It was a bittersweet farewell. Lena knew the risks. John kissed her goodbye, wearing his uniform and a gentle smile. He promised he'd come back. But in his heart, he knew war didn't make promises. By late 1944, the war in the Pacific had grown more brutal. The island-hopping strategy brought U.S. troops closer to Japan, but with every island came fiercer resistance. John joined the newly formed 5th Marine Division. The next target, Iwo Jima, an island just over 700 miles from Tokyo. It was volcanic, fortified, and deadly. As John boarded the ship to the front, he was calm, focused. Fellow Marines recalled how he carried himself not like a celebrity or a decorated hero, but like a Marine ready to fight alongside his brothers. And no fanfare, no speeches, just the quiet determination of a man who knew what awaited him. February 19th, 1945, the black sands of Iwo Jima swallowed the boots of 70,000 Marines. Japanese defenses were dug deep, hidden bunkers, tunnels, artillery nests. It was hell on earth. John Basilone landed with his unit early that morning. Within minutes, they were pinned down. Chaos erupted around them. But John didn't freeze. He led a charge up the beach, destroying an enemy blockhouse with grenades. He reorganized confused squads, barked orders, moved men forward. At one point, a Sherman tank was immobilized in open fire. John ran under constant shelling to guide it to safety. He wasn't just fighting. He was leading, and everyone followed him. In that same hour, as gunfire thundered and smoke choked the skies, John Basilone pressed on. He had cleared the path for his unit, helped save that tank, but as he turned back toward his men, a mortar shell exploded nearby. John fell. He didn't cry out. He didn't move. He gave everything just as he had always done. The beach that took his life would soon be secured. The American flag would rise over Mount Suribachi days later. But John wouldn't see it. His war was over. But his legend had just begun. The news spread quickly. Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone had been killed in action on Iwo Jima. The Marines. It was unthinkable. Basilone, the indestructible Guadalcanal hero, gone. His death wasn't just a battlefield loss. It was a blow to morale across the entire Corps. Officers, enlisted men, even young recruits felt it. Some wept. Others simply sat in silence, unable to process it. His wife, Lena, received the telegram days later. She didn't break down. She stood tall, held the folded flag, and later said, he did what he believed in. He went back because that's who he was. John's death hit hard, but his example hit deeper. John Basilone was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Among the brave who gave all, the service was quiet, dignified. Marines stood at attention. A bugle cried taps into the crisp Virginia air. There were no cameras. No politicians, just family, friends, and fellow warriors. As the casket was lowered, one Marine whispered, "He's with his men now, and that's how John would have wanted it." Not in marble halls or on movie screens, but among the dirt and sweat of those who understood sacrifice. His grave is simple. A name, a rank, a date. but the man beneath was anything but ordinary. John Basilone fell in battle, but his story was only just beginning. His name lives on etched into warships, memorials, and street signs, but his true legacy runs deeper. It lives in the footsteps of young Marines inspired by his courage, in the annual parades of his hometown Raritan, and in classrooms where American students learn what sacrifice really means. He didn't seek to be a hero, he simply lived by what he believed, to fight for his brothers, to stay true to his duty, and never turn away when he was needed most. Lena, his quiet and devoted wife, who never remarried, once said, "He did what he believed in. He went back because that's who he was." John now rests in the quiet grounds of Arlington, but his legend lives on in the hearts of those who understand that some ordinary people live extraordinary lives. If this story moved you, leave a like, share it, and drop a comment below. Every interaction helps keep his memory alive, not just as a hero in history, but as a reminder of the quiet courage that still inspires us today.